The night sky was burning with strange colors. A small human ship came down through the storm clouds, shaking and breaking. The pilot, a young man named Daniel, tried his best to control the ship. Warning lights flashed red across the cabin, and the engine screamed in pain. He pressed the buttons again and again, but nothing worked. The ship fell lower and lower, like a stone thrown into the sea. With a final crash, the ship landed deep inside a glowing forest. Trees taller than knee-high. Buildings stood all around, their leaves shining with blue fire. The ground itself pulsed with strange light as if the soil was alive. Daniel pushed open the broken door and stepped outside. The air was heavy but sweet, and every sound echoed like music. He was alone, lost on a world that no human had ever walked before. For a long moment he stood still, listening. Strange voices moved in the wind, whispers that did not belong to him. Something was out there, watching, waiting. His heart beat fast, but he tried to look calm. He was trained to survive, but no training could prepare him for this place. He walked slowly through the glowing forest, each step sinking into soft earth. His boots left a trail of light behind, as if the ground wanted to remember him. Around him, giant flowers opened and closed like mouths breathing in the air. A river of silver water moved across the land, shining under the twin moons. Daniel felt small, like a child in a dream, too big for him. Suddenly he heard movement. Leaves shook, branches broke, something was close. He turned quickly, hand reaching for the small laser pistol at his side. A shadow stepped out from the mist, tall, elegant, and strange. It was not a beast, not a monster. It was a woman, but not a human woman. Her skin was pale silver, glowing softly in the dark. Her eyes shone like stars, deep and endless. Her hair floated as if touched by invisible winds. She wore armor made of crystal, sharp yet beautiful. On her forehead was a small crown, glowing with red fire. She looked at Daniel with both fear and curiosity. For a second, neither of them moved. He did not know if she would attack or speak. The silence was heavy, broken only by the sound of the glowing river. Daniel's mind raced. This was his first contact with alien life. He needed to say something, anything. But fear made his tongue heavy, so he said the first thing that came into his head. With a shaky laugh, he whispered, "Hey, babe, it was a joke, a stupid joke to hide his fear." He almost regretted it the moment it left his mouth. The alien princess blinked. Her face turned bright like silver touched by fire. She lowered her eyes, and for the first time, he saw something human in her expression. She blushed, as if his words had touched her heart. Then, in a soft voice, she replied, "Yes, baby." Daniel froze. He could not believe what he just heard. She spoke his language, she answered him, but how? Why would an alien princess answer in human words? And why in such a shy, almost tender way? The forest seemed to grow even more silent. Every tree, every flower, every light was waiting. Daniel took a small step forward, his pistol still in hand, but lowered. "Do you understand me?" he asked slowly. The princess nodded, her silver hair moving like water. "Yes," she said. "I understand you, human." He tried to smile, but his mind was full of questions. How could she speak his language? Why did she call him baby so easily, as if she had known him before? And why did her eyes look at him not as a stranger, but almost as if he belonged? The night wind grew stronger, carrying strange echoes. He felt that danger was near, though he could not see it yet. The princess looked around with worry in her glowing eyes. She stepped closer to him, lowering her voice. "You should not be here alone. They will come soon." "Who will come?" Daniel asked quickly, but she did not answer. Instead, she reached out her hand as if asking him to follow. Her fingers glowed faintly, soft light against the dark air. Daniel hesitated, but something inside told him this was the only path. He reached out, and for the first time, human and alien hand touched. The forest around them whispered louder. The light of the twin moons fell across their faces, and in that moment, Daniel knew this was no accident. His crash, her presence, the strange reply to his joke. All of. It was connected, but connected to what? That answer was still waiting in the shadows of the alien world. Daniel followed the alien princess deeper into the glowing forest. Her steps were light, almost floating above the ground. The trees bent. Slightly as she passed, as if bowing to her presence, Daniel kept looking around, afraid of the whispers that still moved in the wind. The air felt heavy, but her hand in his gave him a strange sense of safety. After a while, they came to a large stone gate, half hidden by vines of glowing plants. Symbols carved deep into the rock shone with blue fire. The princess touched the gate with her palm, and the stone moved like water. Slowly it opened to reveal a hidden path. Daniel felt his heart race. This was no normal forest. This was a kingdom hidden from the world. They walked inside, the path leading into a cave of crystal. Walls glittered like frozen stars, and the floor pulsed with light. It was like walking through the heart of a giant diamond. The princess finally stopped and looked at him, her eyes serious. "You must listen carefully, human," she said, her voice soft but sharp like a blade. Daniel nodded, still trying to understand. "You spoke my language," he said slowly. "How is that possible?" The princess lowered her head for a moment, then looked at him again. "We have studied your people for many years," she explained. "Long ago we discovered signals from your planet. Voices, pictures, songs." She paused, then added with a shy smile, "That is how I know your words and how I know your strange greetings." Daniel blinked, realization striking him. She had learned from Earth's broadcasts, television, radio, internet waves flying into space. That was why she understood his joke. That was why she blushed when he said, "Hey babe, it was not magic, it was human culture traveling light years across the galaxy." But her next words sent a chill through his bones. "You are not here by chance, Daniel," she whispered. He froze. "How do you know my name?" he asked, confused. The princess's eyes glowed brighter. "Because our prophecy told of you." Daniel laughed nervously. "Prophecy? Me? I think you've got the wrong guy." But her face was calm, her silver skin shining in the crystal light. "You are the one who will stand against the Shadow Empire," she said. "You are the one who cannot be controlled." Her words hit him like a storm. "What Shadow Empire?" he asked quickly. The princess turned her head, as if listening to faraway voices. "They are our greatest enemy," she explained. "They enslave minds with their psychic power. They break empires without lifting a sword." Her voice shook slightly. "But our people discovered one truth. Humans cannot be controlled. Your minds are different. Your spirit is free." Daniel felt cold. He was just a pilot, just a man trying to survive a crash. Now this alien princess was telling him he was the center of a war. He wanted to run, to deny it. But something in her eyes stopped him. Her belief was real, pure, and unshaken. They continued walking deeper into the crystal caves. Finally, they entered a great hall. Hundreds of alien figures stood there bowing low. Each one had silver skin like the princess, but their armor was darker, marked with strange glowing lines. Daniel felt every eye on him. The whisper of voices filled the hall. They were calling him something, though he did not understand the words. The princess raised her hand, silencing them. Then she looked at Daniel with quiet pride. "They call you Protector," she said. Daniel almost laughed again. "Protector, me? I can barely protect myself." But deep inside, he felt a spark of something new, a weight pressing on his shoulders, but also a fire waiting to rise. The aliens moved aside, revealing a great crystal throne. Upon it sat an older figure, taller than all the rest, his crown shining like a star. The princess knelt, and Daniel followed clumsily. The elder's voice was deep, echoing across the hall. "So the human has come," he said. "The prophecy begins." Daniel wanted to argue, wanted to say this was all wrong, but before he could speak, the elder raised his hand. "The Shadow Empire moves closer every day," he said. "Already their fleets spread across the stars. Only with you can we resist." Daniel's chest tightened. He felt like a small piece trapped in a giant game. But everyone around him looked at him with hope. The princess placed her hand on his arm, gently. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. Only for him. "You are not alone," she said. "I will stand with you." For a moment, Daniel looked into her shining eyes. He saw not just a princess, not just an alien. He saw a companion who truly believed in him. The hall grew silent. Every light dimmed. Daniel felt that something had shifted. His crash landing was no accident. His joke, his strange meeting with the princess, the prophecy. It was all part of a path he could not yet see. And though fear filled his heart, another voice whispered inside him. Maybe, just maybe, he was more than what he thought he was. Daniel walked beside the alien princess as the great hall slowly emptied. The voices of the people still echoed in his ears, calling him Protector, a title he had never dreamed of. He felt like a man lost in someone else's story, yet every look, every bow told him this was no mistake for them. The princess led him through another passage, deeper into the heart of the crystal caves. The walls around them glowed with soft blue light, showing paintings carved thousands of years ago, figures of silver-skinned warriors fighting dark shadows, humans standing at their side. Daniel stopped to stare, his breath caught in his chest. The drawings showed men and women from Earth holding swords of light, standing with the aliens against the enemy. It was not just prophecy, it was history, something that had happened before. "Your kind fought with us long ago," the princess whispered, her voice echoing softly in the cave. "My ancestors told the story, but over time it became legend. Now it is happening again." Daniel shook his head slowly. "That can't be true. Earth doesn't even know you exist." But the princess only smiled, a sad smile, as if she knew more than she wished to say. At the end of the tunnel, the path opened into a massive chamber. Daniel's eyes widened. It was a hidden city glowing like a star inside the planet. Tall towers of crystal rose high. Bridges of light stretched across rivers of silver. Thousands of aliens moved across the streets, their clothes shining with patterns like flowing energy. And above it all, the ceiling of the cave looked like a night sky, full of false stars, yet so beautiful he almost believed it was real. "This is my home," the princess said proudly. "The last kingdom free from the Shadow Empire." Her words carried both strength and sadness. Daniel followed her across a bridge of glowing stone, the city alive with colors he had never seen. Children ran to the sides, pointing at him with wide eyes, whispering. Adults bowed their heads as he passed. It was as if he had become part of their dream, a symbol they had been waiting for. But Daniel's heart was heavy. He thought of his broken ship, lying in the forest. He thought of his crew, gone, his mission, lost. And now, these people wanted him to be their savior. It felt impossible, like asking a child to lift a mountain. The princess noticed his silence. "You do not believe yet," she said gently. Daniel gave a small laugh. "I believe I'm very tired and very confused." She smiled at his honesty, and for a moment her serious face softened. "You will see in time," she whispered. They reached a palace built from pure crystal, its walls tall and sharp, catching light from every direction. Guards in silver armor stood at the gate, their weapons glowing faintly. As they entered, Daniel saw rooms filled with strange machines, glowing orbs that floated in the air, and gardens where plants sang soft notes instead of rustling. It was both beautiful and strange, a place out of dreams. Finally, they stopped in a round chamber with a wide pool in the center. The water was black, but when Daniel looked closer, it showed moving pictures, stars, ships, battles. "This is our memory pool," the princess explained. "It shows us both past and future." Daniel leaned closer and saw himself, standing with the princess fighting against a storm of shadow. He pulled back quickly, shaking his head. "That's not me," he said. "That can't be me." The princess looked at him with calm eyes. "It is not only what is, but what can be," she answered. Her words echoed in his mind like a riddle he could not escape. A sudden sound shook the chamber, a deep rumble like thunder. The guards rushed inside, kneeling before the princess. "My lady," one said. "Scouts report movement at the border. The enemy draws near." The air grew heavy. The pool in the center turned dark. The princess's face tightened with worry, but her voice stayed strong. "Prepare the defenses," she ordered. "The Shadow Empire must not find our heart." Daniel felt the eyes of the guards turn to him. Though they said nothing, their stares carried both hope and doubt. He was supposed to be their protector, yet he had no plan, no power, only fear. He wanted to tell them the truth, that he was not ready, not a hero. But the princess stepped close, placing her hand on his chest. "Courage is not being without fear," she whispered. "It is standing even when fear controls you." Her words sank deep into him. He looked at her silver eyes shining with trust. Maybe he was not ready, but he could not run. Not with an entire kingdom depending on him, not with her standing by his side. The city bells began to ring, sending bright waves of sound through the air. The people rushed into shelters. The soldiers gathered on the walls. From the far end of the cave, Daniel heard a low hum, growing, louder and closer. Something was coming. Something dark. The princess looked at him once more, her voice steady. "The hidden kingdom has revealed itself to you," she said. "Now it is time you reveal yourself to it." Daniel swallowed hard, his hand tightening on the grip of his pistol. He had crashed here as a survivor. Now he stood here as something more. Though he did not yet understand what, the hidden kingdom had accepted him. The prophecy had named him. And as the darkness closed in, Daniel felt that his real journey had only just begun. The sound of the bells spread through the hidden kingdom. Like waves of thunder, Daniel stood at the balcony of the Crystal Palace, watching the soldiers rush into formation. Shields of glowing light were raised. Weapons hummed with energy. The people below hurried into shelters carved into the rock, their faces pale but full of trust. For them, this was not the first time the enemy had come, but for Daniel, it was the first time he would see the Shadow Empire with his own eyes. The princess stood beside him, her silver hair glowing against the storm of colors. She lifted her hand and a floating orb appeared, showing images from the outer border of the cave. Dark ships, shaped like knives of shadow, slid silently across the sky. They were not loud, not burning, but quiet, too quiet. Their silence was more terrifying than fire. Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. "These are only scouts," the princess whispered, her voice calm but sharp. "If they find the path to our heart, the entire fleet will follow." Daniel stared at the image, his throat dry. "Why me?" he muttered. "Why do you all look at me like I can stop this?" The princess turned to him, her star-like eyes steady. "Because you can," she said simply. Before he could argue, the chamber doors opened. A group of elders entered, their faces grave, their robes glowing faintly. They bowed to the princess, but their eyes fell quickly on Daniel. One of them spoke, his voice deep and heavy. "The human must face the test." Daniel blinked. "Test? What test?" The elder pointed toward the memory pool in the center of the chamber. "To resist the Shadow Empire, he must show his mind cannot be bent." Daniel frowned, his stomach twisting. He had no idea what that meant, but he knew he had no choice. The princess touched his shoulder gently. "I will stay with you," she whispered. "But you must step into the pool alone." Daniel looked down at the black water, its surface rippling like a living thing. Every part of his body screamed. Not to go in, but the eyes of the elders, the soldiers, and the princess were on him. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. The cold of the pool wrapped around him like chains. For a moment, everything went dark. Then he opened his eyes and found himself standing in a strange world. The sky was endless black. The ground was ash. Shadows moved across the land. Tall, thin figures with eyes like red fire. One of them stepped closer, its voice sliding into his mind. "Human, you are nothing. You cannot fight us. Surrender and be at peace." Daniel clenched his fists. He felt the voice press against his skull, like claws trying to dig into his thoughts. He heard whispers, memories of fear, moments of failure. But then another memory rose. The princess blushing when she whispered, "Yes, baby." The trust in her eyes, the hope in the voices of the people. That memory burned like fire inside him. "No," he said aloud, "you will not control me." The shadow hissed, pressing harder. Images of despair flooded his mind, his broken ship, his lost crew, his failures. But Daniel's jaw tightened. "I may be nothing to you," he growled, "but I am still me, and you will never take that away." The ash ground beneath his feet cracked with light. The shadow screamed, retreating back into the dark. And in that moment, the false world shattered. Daniel gasped, pulling himself out of the pool. The elders stared in silence, their glowing robes flickering. The princess rushed forward, grabbing his arm before he fell. Her eyes shone with pride and relief. "He cannot be bent," she whispered, her voice shaking with emotion. The elders bowed their heads. "It is true," one of them said. "The prophecy lives. The Shadow Empire cannot touch his mind." Daniel stood weak, water dripping from his clothes. He wanted to laugh, to cry, to run, but all he could do was breathe. He had faced the shadows, and somehow he had not broken. Before relief could sink in, another orb rushed into the chamber. A soldier's voice echoed from it, sharp and panicked. "The scouts are breaking through. They are testing our shields." The orb flickered, showing blasts of dark energy striking against the glowing barrier of the kingdom. The shield held, but cracks of light spread across it. "They will not." "Stop," the princess said, her voice low. "They will keep pressing until the shield falls, and when it does, they will come with all their fleets." Daniel swallowed hard. He knew what she meant. This was not a single fight. This was the start of war. The Shadow Empire had found them, and they would not rest until the hidden kingdom was ashes. The princess turned to him, her silver eyes burning. "You see now why we need you," she said. "Without you, we will fall." Daniel looked at her. At the people who believed in him, he was scared more than ever. But fear was not enough to make him step back anymore. The shadows had tried to break him and failed. Now he had to find a way to fight them, even if he did not yet know how. The bells rang louder, shaking the crystal walls. Soldiers shouted in the streets, children cried in the shelters. The hidden kingdom trembled as the enemy pressed harder against its shield. And as Daniel stood at the heart of it all, he realized the truth. The dark threat was no longer a story whispered in prophecy. It was here, it was real, and it was coming straight for them. The hidden kingdom did not sleep after the attack. Even though the shields had held, everyone knew the Shadow Empire would return, stronger and more ruthless. The people whispered in the streets, fear hiding in their eyes. But when they looked at Daniel, that fear turned into hope. They believed he was the one who would stand against the darkness. Daniel did not know if he could carry that weight, but he knew he had to try. The princess took him to a wide chamber at the edge of the city. The floor was marked with glowing circles. Weapons floated in the air, waiting. "This is our training hall," she explained, her voice calm. "Here, you will learn to fight, as we do." Daniel gave a nervous laugh. "I can barely fight the way humans do." But the princess only smiled. "That is why you must learn." The first weapon she gave him was a staff of crystal. It was light in his hands, but when he moved it, it hummed with power. "Your body must move with the energy," she told him, "not against it." She swung her own staff with grace, the crystal glowing brighter with each strike. Daniel tried to copy her, but his staff slipped and clattered on the floor. The princess covered her mouth, trying not to laugh, her silver cheeks glowing faintly. "Don't laugh," Daniel said with a grin, picking it up. "I'm not laughing," she replied quickly, though her eyes betrayed her amusement. For the first time since his crash, Daniel felt a lightness in his chest. The war, the prophecy, the shadows, for a moment it all faded, replaced by the sound of her laughter. Day after day he trained under her guidance. At first he failed at everything. The alien weapons were strange. their technology alive, responding not only to movement but to thought. When Daniel tried too hard, they rejected him, buzzing in his hands. When he relaxed, when he let instinct guide him, the weapons began to respond. The princess nodded at his progress, pride glowing in her eyes. "You learn faster than you think," she told him. But training was not only about weapons. She showed him how to move silently through the crystal caves, how to use the glowing walls as mirrors, how to feel the hum of energy that pulsed beneath the city. Daniel learned that the kingdom itself was alive, connected to its people. When he touched the walls, he felt warmth, like a heartbeat beneath his palm. The princess explained that this bond was why the Shadow Empire hated them. They could not control what was alive with free will. One evening, after hours of training, Daniel collapsed on the floor, sweating. "I'm never going to be like you," he said between breaths. The princess sat beside him, her silver hair falling across her face. "You are not meant to be like me," she said softly. "You are meant to be you." Daniel looked at her, surprised by the simple truth in her words. Her eyes softened, and for a moment, the silence between them spoke more than any prophecy. They began to spend time together outside of training. She took him through the markets of the hidden city. The people offered him food made of glowing fruit, drinks that tasted like starlight. Children followed him, laughing, trying to mimic his clumsy movements. The princess walked beside him, smiling more than before every time he made a joke. Her cheeks turned faintly red, and she would look away shyly. Daniel began to realize that behind the crown, behind the armor, she was not just a princess. She was someone who carried loneliness, someone who longed for connection. One night, they climbed to the top of a crystal tower. The false stars above shimmered, casting silver light across the city. Daniel leaned against the edge, breathing deeply. "Back on Earth, I was just another man," he said quietly. "Nobody believed in me. Not like this." The princess looked at him, her voice soft but steady. "Perhaps that is why you are the one, because you know how it feels to be unseen, yet still you rise." Daniel turned to her, the words catching in his throat. He wanted to tell her how much her faith meant. But before he could, a sudden flare lit up the sky, the shields shaking under another distant strike. The Shadow Empire was testing them again, reminding them that time was short. The princess stood tall, her expression returning to steel. "We have little time," she said firmly. "You must be ready when the true battle comes." Daniel nodded, gripping his staff tightly. Fear still lived inside him, but alongside it grew something stronger, the bond he shared with her, the belief she placed in him. He was not just training his body, he was training his heart. The days blurred into weeks, each one harder than the last. Daniel's arms ached, his mind strained, but slowly, he changed. He no longer dropped the staff, he no longer stumbled at every strike. His movements grew sharper, faster, guided by instinct and fire, and every time he looked at the princess, he found new strength. Not because of prophecy, not because of destiny, but because she believed in him. One evening, after a long day, they stood together in silence, watching the glowing river flow through the city. The princess turned to him, her voice barely a whisper. "When the shadows come again, I will fight beside you." Daniel looked at her, and for the first time since his crash, he truly believed. Together they would stand. Together they would face the dark. The day of the battle came faster than anyone expected. For weeks, the Shadow Empire had tested the shields of the Hidden Kingdom, striking again and again. Each strike grew stronger. Each blast cracked the crystal walls a little more. The people prayed in silence, the soldiers sharpened their weapons, and the air was heavy with fear. Daniel stood with the princess at the edge of the city, looking out toward the dark horizon. The shield shone like a giant dome of light above them. But on the far side, the sky was filled with black ships, countless, silent, waiting like wolves before the kill. Daniel's throat tightened at the sight, his human mind struggling to understand how many enemies there were. The princess spoke firmly, her voice calm even as the ground shook. "They will come soon. This is the moment we have trained for." When the first blast hit, the city trembled. The shields flashed, holding against the wave of dark energy. But the cracks spread faster now, bright lines racing across the dome of light. The people cried out, and soldiers raised their staffs of crystal, ready for war. Daniel gripped his own weapon, his heart pounding in his chest like a drum. The shields broke. With a sound like glass shattering, the dome of light fell into a million glowing pieces. The Shadow Empire poured in, ships raining from the sky, soldiers of black armor landing on the crystal bridges. Their eyes burned red, their weapons hissed with shadow fire. The hidden kingdom roared in answer, their people fighting back with light. Daniel ran forward with the princess at his side. He swung his staff, the crystal blade sparking with energy. The first shadow soldier fell, bursting into smoke. The next, one struck at him with claws of darkness, but Daniel blocked, the force shaking his arms. He pushed back with all his strength, and the enemy shattered into nothing. The princess moved like a storm, her armor glowing, her staff cutting through the enemy with speed and grace. She called out commands in her native tongue. Her people, answering with courage, the crystal city burned with light and shadow, bridges breaking, towers falling. But the hidden kingdom stood firm, their hearts united. Daniel felt fear press at his mind, the same cold whispers from the test in the memory pool. The shadows tried to bend his thoughts, telling him he was weak, telling him to run. But he shouted back, swinging harder, his voice rising above the chaos. I am not yours. I will never be yours. Every strike he made burned brighter, the crystal staff feeding on his will. At one point, Daniel was surrounded, 5 shadow soldiers circling him, their red eyes locked on him, their whispers hissing in his ears. The fear almost crushed him, but then he heard her voice. Daniel, the princess shouted, her eyes blazing with fire. Stand with me. He looked at her, and in that instant, he found his strength again. He spun with his staff, striking in every direction, the enemies bursting one by one. But the battle was not only theirs. The kingdom itself seemed to fight, the glowing walls pulsing brighter, sending waves of energy into the attackers. The river of silver water rose like a serpent, striking at the black ships. It was as if the land itself refused to fall to darkness. Still, the Shadow Empire was endless. For every soldier defeated, more appeared, pouring from their ships. Daniel's arms ached, his chest burned, sweat and blood covered him. But he kept going, because beside him, the princess kept fighting. Together they moved as one, their staffs clashing and striking in rhythm. Then came the moment of terror. Taller than any tower, its roar shaking the cave. Its eyes burned like suns of fire, its claws tearing through the streets. The soldiers screamed, the people hid, even the bravest warriors stepped back in fear. Daniel felt his knees weaken. This was not just another soldier, this was a monster born from the heart of darkness. The princess gripped his arm, her voice steady. We face it together, she said. He nodded, though his body shook. They rushed forward, the beast striking with claws that split the crystal ground. Daniel rolled aside, swinging his staff at its leg, sparks flying but not breaking its skin. The princess leapt high, striking its face, forcing it back. But the beast roared and swung wildly, knocking her to the ground. Daniel screamed her name, running to her side. The beast loomed over them, ready to strike. Daniel raised his staff, standing between her and death. He thought of Earth, of his lost ship, of the day he crashed. He thought of the people who now called him protector, and most of all he thought of her, the princess who believed in him with a roar of his own. He charged, the crystal staff blazed with light, brighter than ever before. Daniel struck with all his strength, his will burning through the weapon. The beast screamed, its body cracking with light, and with one final strike it burst into a storm of fire and smoke. The city erupted in cheers, the people's voices echoing like thunder. The princess stood, her face pale but her eyes shining with pride. You did it, she whispered, her voice trembling with relief. Daniel gasped for breath, looking at her with a tired smile. No, he said softly. We did it. The battle raged on in smaller fights, but the fall of the beast turned the tide. The Shadow Empire's forces began to retreat, their ships pulling back into the darkness. The hidden kingdom stood bloodied but unbroken, and at its heart, Daniel and the princess stood side by side, their bond stronger than ever. But as the last enemy ship vanished into the sky, Daniel knew this was not the end. This was only the beginning. The great battle had been won, but the war with the Shadow Empire was far from over. The great battle was over. The city still smoked from fire and falling towers, but the people of the Hidden Kingdom stood together. They had survived, they had fought back, and for the first time in years, the Shadow Empire had retreated. Cheering voices filled the air, echoing through the crystal caves. A song of hope, rising from broken ground. Daniel stood in the center of it all, his staff dim now, but his spirit burning brighter than ever. The people knelt to him, bowing low, calling him protector again and again. He had tried to deny it, tried to believe he was just another man, but now, looking at their faces, their belief, their tears of relief, he felt the truth. He was no longer only Daniel from Earth. He was Daniel, the protector of the Hidden Kingdom. The princess stepped toward him, her silver armor cracked, her face pale, but her eyes alive with fire. She looked at him not as a prophecy, not as a savior, but as someone she trusted with her whole heart. "You stood when no one else could," she whispered, her voice trembling. Daniel gave a tired smile. "I stood because you stood with me." The people carried them to the palace steps, singing in their strange, beautiful language. Children ran behind them, throwing glowing petals into the air. Elders bowed their heads, tears running down their faces. The Hidden Kingdom had not only survived, it had found its hero. That night, the city lit with celebration. The towers glowed brighter than ever. The river of silver water rose in waves of joy. Music filled the air, a sound Daniel had never heard before, deep and pure. He sat with the princess on the balcony, watching the people dance below. For the first time since his crash, he felt peace. The princess turned to him, her cheeks glowing faintly. "You changed us," she said softly, "not only with your strength, but with your spirit." Daniel shook his head. "No, you changed me. I came here broken, lost, but you gave me a reason to fight." Her eyes softened, and for a long moment they sat in silence, the stars above them shimmering like witnesses. Then, in a quiet voice, Daniel said, "You know, when I first saw you, I was terrified." He laughed a little, shaking his head. "And the only thing I could say was, 'Hey, babe?'" The princess blushed, turning her face slightly away, her silver skin glowing pink. "And I answered," she whispered, her voice shy. "Yes, baby." Daniel looked at her, his chest warm. And I'll never forget that. The moment between them grew heavy, not with fear, but with something new, something stronger than prophecy, stronger than war. The bond of two souls who had chosen each other in the darkest hour. The princess placed her hand in his, and this time, she did not pull away. Daniel squeezed it gently, knowing he had found more than a kingdom to protect. He had found love. But peace did not last long. A messenger rushed into the palace, kneeling before them, his face pale. "My lady, protector," he said breathlessly. "A signal has been found, not from the Shadow Empire, but from beyond the stars." Daniel stood quickly, his heart racing. "Show me," he ordered. The messenger held up a glowing orb, and a sound filled the chamber. Static at first, then words, human words. "Daniel, this is Earth Command. We received your distress signal. We know you are alive and we are coming." Daniel froze. His breath caught in his chest. Earth, his home, they had heard they were on their way. The princess looked at him, her expression unreadable. "Your people," she whispered. "They are coming here." Daniel nodded slowly, a storm of emotions filling him. Joy, fear, hope, and uncertainty all at once. The world he thought he had lost was now reaching into the new world he had found. He turned to the princess, seeing the question in her eyes. Would he leave when Earth arrived? Would he abandon the Hidden Kingdom after all they had faced? Daniel took her hand again, his voice firm. No matter what happens, I will not leave. I will not leave this kingdom. Her eyes filled with light, and for the first time her lips curved into a smile both shy and full of love. Below them the people still sang, their voices carrying hope into the air. Above them the stars shone brighter as if the galaxy itself was watching. Daniel stood tall, not just a survivor, not just a soldier, but a protector, a lover, and a bridge between two worlds. The war was not over. The Shadow Empire would return, and now Earth would enter the game. But he was no longer afraid, with the princess by his side, with a kingdom behind him. Daniel knew the truth. This was not the end of his story. It was only the beginning of something greater. And as the night grew quiet, the princess leaned closer, whispering once again, soft and certain, "Yes, baby."